You mentioned curcumin, which a lot of us have heard of, and black pepper, but Boswellia is something that I'm not familiar with. You did talk about it in your book. Can you
Yes.
share with our audience what it is? Can you get it in the spice
Bosmeric, yes.
aisle?
So it's not a spice. It's actually it's from a tree, and
Mm.
it's actually a gum resin of the tree. So when you think of like the classically Americans will think of the gift that the Magi brought to baby Jesus. Okay, it's frankincense. Frankincense is Boswellia, right?
Mm.
Frankincense, myrrh, and gold. In fact, some of the connotation is that the gold would have been turmeric at that time because turmeric was being sold and the spice trade was more expensive than gold. So, and usually they would carry those kind of three things together. Myrrh is actually Google, not the website, but it's another herb. These are the three things that come from India. That's where the wise men from. But anyways, another discussion. But so Boswellia has a lot of anti-inflammatory effects, and what we've done is we've been able to extract the three main components, something called polysol, which is we're the only one in the whole market now that has a patent on that aspect of the frankincense that actually has a 20-minute onset of action. So when someone takes it like a fast tab, within 20 minutes, we're lowering the inflammation. Has great inflammation effects on the lung and brain and all over. But when you use those things in combination, Boswellia, and we have all the three parts, AKBBA and boswellic acids and the polysol. So we have the right ratios. And you combine it though with the curcumin and ginger and black pepper. It took us 6 years of doing different studies, looking at getting the right doses and the right potencies of those phytochemicals to create what we call maximum synergy. The reason why we cook with spices and the reason why we make formula in Ayurvedic medicine or Chinese medicine is because there's a synergy of effects. There's things that are augmenting 1 + 1 = 3. And also, how can we prevent someone from building tolerance of taking a drug? Where in Western medicine, it's always like a single pathway, single agent magic bullet. I don't think we should be carrying guns. I'm looking at the sprinkler system effect. I want to kind of be tuning down and turning down all the things correctly, but I don't want to have to use a power fire hose and then kind of spray the whole thing down. And yes, I put out the fire, but I might cause some kind of damage elsewhere. So when you actually look at the blending of these things, natural anti-inflammatories like Boswell and PS in our Bosmeric, that's a unique thing that people can take. And that's kind of the first aspect that everybody can do, because when everybody right now is going to go get an NSAID, 30% of the population uses some kind of ibuprofen, Motrin, Advil. Those are the brand names, but, naproxen, Aleve and those kind of things like that, or even prescription ones, tramadol and other things, or even opioids, for example. But we want to look at is why opioids have an addiction, for example, is because they're not anti-inflammatory. Right? So it helps the mind perceive there's no pain, but once it wears off, the pain is still underneath them. So the addiction occurs because there's never pain control. You have to lower the inflammation.
Like an Advil is.
So Advil lowers one pathway of inflammation, where Bosmeric will lower about 102, right? Now, Advil, which is, ibuprofen, has a black box warning. And the black box warning basically means that you can have a heart attack, a stroke, or a GI bleed at any time taking that drug, even just one time. Yeah. So, hey, I ride my cycle. I'm a little sore today. I take it. Or I have a menstrual cycle once a month, or I just got a headache, or I'm just cleaning my house. I was moving my furniture. I kind of hurt my back. I take that. You can have a heart attack, GI bleed, or stroke at any time, even if you're plant-based and your cholesterol levels are normal and you don't have a blood pressure problem. Right? So the number one cause of death outside of lifestyle diseases mean heart disease, right? Is number one lifestyle disease. But the larger death per year is side effects of Western drugs and medical errors. And of that class, which is more than heart disease, by the way, is the NSAID class. Now, why people don't take that off the market is because every time you open the pill, you've accepted the terms and conditions of that black box warning. My book goes into the detail of black box warnings, by the way, for those people who are trying to understand like what a black box warning is. Not every drug has it, but when a drug has it, you better be paying attention, because that means those things occur commonly, not rarely, but common enough that if it does happen, you end up in the black box. And people used to think that was just a little black box on the printout. The black box that they're talking about is the casket.
It doesn't seem that scary. I don't know of anyone that's died of taking an Advil.
So, but people who die of heart attacks and GI bleeds and strokes, right? Number one, number two, number three, right? So of those people, you can go back and say, but gosh, weren't they taking something that was lowering their cholesterol? And wasn't they taking something where their blood pressure was normal? Yes, yes, yes. So they all have comorbid conditions. But the thing is, it puts that risk having higher. So when you see like patients over 23 years, you will find this, right? So like, yeah, but like when a family or friend of yours if they end up in the hospital with a heart attack, yes, they have high cholesterol in general, maybe, Yes, they might have high blood pressure in general, maybe. They might have a blood sugar problem, but the universal thing that 30% of them, all these people are taking are NSAIDs, which push them over the top.
Might be from that, right?
And one of the issues is that what you're doing is you're lowering the inflammation, but you're not dealing with why you had the pain in the
You're not
first
fixing
place.
it. And
Lifting.
exactly. And more importantly, for most people who take an NSAID, it's usually for joint pain. And so the data will show, and I have a whole section of my book, citing all the studies. I have like thousands of references in the book, right, of 500 pages. But it's looking at like over 2 years of someone taking an NSAID, there's actually joint degeneration that occurs that is even visible on X-ray, right? So when people are looking at, so most people will take an NSAID and it's like, oh, I just took it once, for my knee pain here and there. And then it's like, it becomes, now I'm taking it once, twice a day. And eventually it's like 1-3 times a day. Now I take 2 of this and I take this other one, right? So they start stacking it. And the reason being is because it's actually causing more degeneration of all the components of the joint structure than it is lowering the inflammation, because that's the side effect of the drug. Now we have data showing that it's dysfunctioning the microbiome, which we didn't even know. Right? These are things that we're not looking at because these are things over the counter, like they're not studied for this. These are just, now we have to look back and go, what are all these people doing? And now look at the things that we took for granted that, hey, we can go to the big box store and buy a bottle of 2,000 caplets for $10. Right? So it's like, why isn't it studied? I'm like, yeah, the study says that you can have this, and you take it, buyer beware.
And that's the thing, is that because it is over the counter, we treat it much more lightly, like you said.
I know.
So if someone were to take curcumin or ice that issue, would that have the same quick effect? Or is it something like, what would you recommend to someone who was moving a television and got their back out of whack a little bit and wanted some relief?
Correct. Like icing it, putting heating pads, icing it, that's a great idea. There's also technologies that can increase, microcirculation, increase nitric oxide production. There's a lot of things that we can heal injuries really quickly, but taking a natural anti-inflammatory is great. The challenge is in the marketplace is getting them the right ones, because right now when you say curcumin or turmeric, 43% of that on the whole entire market is synthetically made now. So if you go to the largest online retailer right now, or you go to the fancy whole health food store, 43% of all that is synthetic.
How do we know?
Because it's been tested.
No, but how do we know that it's synthetic? Like, how can we say I don't want that one? It's synthetic. Does it say on the bottle?
That's the problem. That's the problem with dietary supplements in general. That's why when we look at ours, we're looking at, that's the challenge, right? Because the average person is going to say,
it's not in a black box.
It's not in the black box, and I can just go to the store and it sounds like the same thing. I go, it's not the same thing. It's made with solvents. It's made one curcuminoid. It can have side effects. People can have allergies. People can get actually rashes and diarrhea taking it. So that's why when people take a supplement, sometimes they go, I had this problem. It's opposite of what they thought. It's usually because it's adulterated or it's synthetic or it's not exactly, meeting the labeled claim. And so when we look at potency, purity, efficacy, and safety, I mean, that's what I've been doing for 23 years. It's like formulation, but also formulation from manufacturing, from clinical studies, all the way from a trial, from a farm, all the way to the study, to the trial. That's how we provide the food as medicine. The challenge is right now is that everybody's just going to go right now to, Google something and whatever the first thing shows up on the online retailer, like an Amazon, it's like, that's all marketing. The number one product right now that's being sold in this category, for example, when we do the analytics, their base cost, selling at $19.95 will be less than $3 all in, meaning the packaging, the bottle, the capsules. You cannot even get some, the cheapest thing falling off the back of a truck in China still would cost more, right?
Well, I was thinking more the spice aisle. Are they synthetic?
Oh, yes.
That's what I use. Why would we have to swallow it? Why can't, curcumin that you're
so curcumin is 3 to 5% of turmeric, right? Okay. So it's not the same. So again, that's where people don't understand, like that. And even the marketing, they interchange them. They're different. Turmeric is turmeric. So when you buy the spice, you're buying turmeric. You're not buying curcumin. Okay. So that's interesting. Now, can you get important compounds from there? Yeah, there's 100 compounds in turmeric that are very helpful. Please eat that every day if you can. You can make yellow curry, make Indian food. Great, great, great. However, when we're taking that 3% of that, so say if you get a pound of turmeric, you're getting then, 3% of that pound is curcuminoids. Right? Then we take the extraction. So what we're trying to do with natural therapies is we're trying to give a biological effect that's stronger than eating something for the last 40 years, which you haven't done. Right? It's not saying that the spices are wrong. In fact, I'm actually doing a monthly a thing on YouTube about spices, right? I'm talking about 4 spices every week or every month to introduce people the healing part of spice, the anti-inflammatory parts of spices, the spices for your brain and your digestion and lowering diseases. That's where we should be using the food. But a lot of people who go plant-based, unfortunately, don't eat a lot of spices because we're not trained with cooking. So they're like, oh, I steam my kale, my quinoa, and this, that, but they're not talking about ajuane or, curcumin or black cumin seeds or, cinnamon or chili or other kinds of, caraway, or, I mean, there's tons and tons of different types of spices. But the thing is, when someone has a headache or someone has back pain, it takes a little bit of time. Now, I also explain and I teach my patients also how to do things like you can do this daily, then it'll lower your overall inflammatory burden. So then you don't get that peak. Obviously, we'll do that. But for most people, we need to convince them immediately because they're going to go. Otherwise, they're going to say, well, I'm eating this way. I got a headache. I'm just going to go to the pharmacy store and buy something and take it over the counter, right? Not knowing that black box warning or the degeneration or their microbiome dysfunction or kidney problems and all these things that we now know are occurring, but it's never solving the problem. It's just treating it, the symptoms. When we use the natural therapies, though, again, since we're upregulating, downregulating, we're also getting preventative benefits. So we're turning down inflammation, which is preventing their telomeres from aging, right? So it's an anti-inflammatory process. It's an antioxidant process. It's lowering their cholesterol indirectly. It's lowering their blood sugar indirectly. It's lowering their neurodegeneration indirectly. So if they take it even as a preventative, they don't have to take high doses, but if you take the right thing, that's the strongest thing that you can get a return on your investment.